Perfect, Alex. Great to have somebody that knows technology on the line.
It's all right. I know how annoying it would be if you didn't do that at the beginning. Cool. So thanks very much, Warren, for the introduction. I'm really happy to be here today, and thank you for the invitation to talk to you all. And thank you for all of you guys who've subscribed to hear what I have to say as well. So I'm Alex Graves, one of the co-founders and director at Silicon Reef. And today I'm going to talk to you about some of it was billed as the Microsoft remote working tools you haven't heard of. I have actually inserted the probably in there, kind of a bit like Carling, I guess, and probably the best. But yeah, you may have heard of some of them, but they might not have heard of some of them I'm going to talk about as well. How the session is going to be broken down today. Just as Warren said, it's going to be about a 40 to 45-minute session. If I can keep it shorter, I will do, as I know that everybody's time is very precious. So who is Silicon Reef? I'll introduce you to a concept called work happy that we live and breathe at Silicon Reef, and are working with our clients on this as well. We've conducted an employee survey of 1,000 people. I'll talk about our findings of that in the last 5 months. The kind of key thing that we're going to talk about today is the Microsoft ecosystem of productivity tools. And again, some of the tips that I might be able to pass on specifically around the applications of Teams, ToDo, and Planner to help you kind of be more productive in the workplace. But also something that was really important to me, and also we're using more and more, is My Analytics in the Microsoft 365 suite. I'll cover that topic, and then I'll wrap up with some hints and tips of things that we've learned in the last 6 months, but also things that we're talking to our clients about. And as Warren said, we'll wrap up with some Q&A at the end, so please use the Q&A in the Zoom chat. Just want to make sure that I'm just covering this off. What this isn't meant to be a training session. And for those of you that are concerned, this isn't going to get technical. I'm not a technical person. I'm more of a business person than a technical person. And I promise there won't be any technical chat going on. And if you have technical questions, I'll do my best, but I might have to take them away at the end. So the key objective of this session is to help you be more productive and ultimately work happy. And I'll cover exactly what work happy means to us in Silicon Reef, and also to me as an individual shortly. So who is Silicon Reef? Our background, we've been around for around 3.5 years now. It was 5 founders that founded the company, and an important part of our journey actually is about where we started the journey. And the 5 of us founders, we met at Unilever as contractors, and we were introduced about, I'd say about 8 to 10 years ago now, into the concept of the digital workplace. And it's kind of a common word now, the digital workplace concept, as is digital transformation. But also, one of the words that Unilever used to use was agile working. And it didn't mean it as in like agile project management. It meant it as in you can work from anywhere on any device. And this was around 10 years ago that Unilever first started to introduce this. And what it gave us as founders of now Silicon Reef was a feeling of what it's like to be trusted by an employer, to let you free and just say, get on and do your work from wherever you want to do it. We don't need you to be in the office full time. And if Unilever, who has 100,000 employees, can trust those people to get on and do that, why can't anyone do that? And I'll talk about some of the survey results that we've had around that, but that was really the foundation of where Silicon Reef started, and the ethos that we've bred and lived for all of our employees as we've been on our journey for the last 3.5 years. And it's a foundation of trust is given rather than earned. And that came from our foundation of what we experienced at Unilever all those years ago. Just another little fact about Silicon Reef is that in the last 3.5 years, we've now up to just under 30 employees, and we've got some fantastic customers, and I'll talk about who they are shortly. We are Microsoft specialists, since that's the topic I'm going to talk about to you today. What this means that we do is we create applications specifically around Azure, SharePoint, Office or Microsoft 365, Teams, it could be Yammer, Planner, BI, Power Platform, anything Microsoft. We don't do anything in the Google or Amazon world. We're solely Microsoft partners. And what our mission is, and again, it's talking about the theme of today, it's helping people to reach that modern workplace experience, or as Unilever used to call it, that kind of digital workplace. It's now the modern workplace experience it's evolved into. And we use these Microsoft technologies to help people to be connected, productive, and live a life of balance. And the productive and living a life of balance is, again, part of what I'm talking about today. But it also leads me into talking about what it means to be working happy. So this is something that we have started to talk about more and more over the last 3-4 months. And to us, work happy it's not just about what's happened in the last kind of 5 months since the COVID situation. This is something we believe we've been living since day one of Silicon Reef. And we'd actually like everybody that we work with and others to embrace the attitude of you can work from anywhere, and you can give people the technology and to be productive from no matter where they are in the world. But importantly, how we work, it's about understanding people within an organization and how we can actually help them realize the potential of the technology that they use, and how they can actually maybe change their working habits themselves, but also to cascade that up to their organization so the organization can reach its goals. And how do we do that? Well, we start with a challenge, really. It's we challenge people to say, are you up for doing this? Do you want to work happy? Is it something that you would like to achieve as an organization? And we start with the research phase of understanding how people work today, and then also how they can actually work in the future. We overlay that with the technology of the Microsoft suite, and some of the tools that I am going to talk about today, like Teams, is a fundamental part of that technology suite now. And if it isn't right, using Teams as it is out of the box, that's where we bring in our technologists and our experts and the guys who really are the technical people to create bespoke products in the Microsoft world. And the outcome is really important to us about how we're actually transitioning people to a new way of working, and that digital online platform of embracing that working from anywhere, that truly agile or that digital workplace environment. What that looks like in terms of benefits for teams, and this might be you as an individual, your colleagues, but also your wider teams around you. It's that freedom and flexibility to work in a way that suits you. And now more than ever, Silicon Reef have adapted that to how our employees work as well. Lots of people have been having to adapt how they work, their working hours maybe, or where they work from, because we've all been working from home. But also, I myself have adapted. I used to work at my dining table when I worked at home, and I now work from the garden. So it just changes as and when, the flexibility allows you to do that. Being connected and motivating, that's, again, it's a huge part of employee engagement. Is one of the big things that we do as our deliverables to customers that we work with, whether it's through intranet solutions or whether it's through driving a campaign that they might be running internally around sustainability or getting a better work-life balance. That's some of the work that we do. But ultimately, when the key to success is that we're trying to help people to be more inspired and motivated, and whether that's just through things like using the communications channels available from Teams or Yammer or an intranet based on SharePoint, through engaging articles from created by a communications team, and some of these things, and studies have shown that employees are retained better in an organization if they actually feel engaged and they feel part of what the organization is trying to achieve. And we believe that work happy will actually be a really big part of that. Increased productivity, I'll show you some productivity tools today as well. But also ultimately, if you've got higher employee retention and greater productivity, you're going to get improved profitability as an organization, because everyone's motivated to try and achieve the same thing in the same direction. Who do we do it for? So just to give you some context around who Silicon Reef is and our clients, there are some names on there and brands on there I'm sure you recognize, some that you might not. So we work with the big FMCG clients, huge companies like BP and Shell as well, we've worked with in the past, and also some government clients as well, and charity clients like we work with Farm Africa, a great organization based in East Africa, trying to help them be more productive and using the technology tools to connect people who are spread across East Africa. So that's just to give you some context about who we are doing this, who we do our work with. I thought I'd just tell you a bit about what work happy means for me, and some personal things that I think put it into context as well about how my outlook on work happy and how I've adjusted my way of working to fit in with my goals here. So these are my kind of 5 work happy goals of always putting my family first. It's something that has always been a fundamental part of my belief that my family come first and everything is about that family. My goals as well, achieving my goals makes me happy. Being productive on a daily basis. This sounds quite a funny one, but actually I think at the end of every day when I look back and say, did I achieve the things I want to achieve? It does give you that feeling of actually, yeah, I'm moving forwards. I'm achieving my goals. But the other thing is making sure you get that balance right. And to me, that could be the family balance of making sure I'm getting enough time to spend with my family. Taking holidays is a really important thing as well. But also not working too late into the evenings or picking up my emails on weekends. And one of the tools I'm going to show you today is something that changed my approach quite a lot about making sure I am getting that balance right. And as you'll see from the data I'll show you, it's a journey, but it's one I'm striving towards. And the other thing is just seeing others doing what I believe is the work happy movement and what we're looking to try and achieve. And I hope that anything I can pass on today will also help inspire you in terms of being more productive, but also if it will help you get a work-life balance back, I really hope that's something that I'll hear from you in the future. So, as I said, for us, Silicon Reef is about working from anywhere. It's not just this work from home that has been forced upon us. We've believed in working from anywhere since our inception, and to that degree, all of our employees are UK based, but actually, if we're quite diverse in our organization, with a 50-50 gender split, but also we've got lots of different nationalities. We have Kiwis, we have an American person as well, Amanda, who might be on this call today. But actually, if people want to travel back to New Zealand to go and work, or to Australia, or go back to America to go and work for a while to see their family, it doesn't matter where they're doing that from for us. The technology allows them to stay connected and to get their work done. And there's that foundation of trust which underpins everything that we do, which is all around making sure that we are flexible and we are saying, yep, absolutely, you can go and work from anywhere. It doesn't really matter to us where you do that. So this leads me into talking about a survey that we ran whilst we were in the COVID lockdown period. And we actually ran this survey for 1,000 office-based workers who are based in the UK. And this was actually in the end of May and beginning of June. So it was right in the middle of the lockdown period. And one of the things that we wanted to try and understand was the change in people's attitudes of how they are approaching working from home, but ultimately the working from anywhere as well is an ambition. And you'll see that the past, and what I'd like to reflect this as is that the past is perhaps I'm going to call it the old normal. And this is something I heard on a Microsoft podcast fairly recently, this concept of old normal. But the old normal was actually people going to the office full time and employers making sure that people were in the office surrounding them. They can kind of walk to a desk and see what they're doing. And I think that's what I'm going to call that the old normal. The new normal is where the present is represented on this data, and the new normal it was kind of forced upon us. We were all forced to work in the way that we're working today. We're being remote, and some of the key highlights that I'd like to call out from the stats here is that only 8% of people in the past, in the old normal, had the flexibility to work from home. With a typical comment when we asked these people was like, we were allowed to work from home as long as it was approved in advance. And fundamentally, that's probably a trust thing that formed that idea of giving somebody the approval to work from home. And now again, it's almost like trust was forced upon employees of an organization to be based at home and just trust that they will get on and carry on and work. Other key highlights, 89% of people felt more productive, 73% felt more supported by people. And actually, the unsurprising fact there with the car is 64% enjoyed not having to do their daily commute. And I actually was surprised at that. I thought that would be higher, with people wanting to not having to do a daily commute and being happy to work at home. Another one I just call out is in the bottom left corner there is about people feeling lonely and excluded while working from home. This is definitely part of something that is a byproduct of what was forced upon us in this new normal. And yeah, but just something that Silicon Reef introduced fairly recently, but actually we did other things early on, was actually introducing coffee breaks, like actual kind of breaks in the day in everybody's diary, where somebody could drop into a meeting and spend 15-minute slot. If they have it free in their diary, just drop in and catch up with somebody within the team, so you're not feeling lonely and isolated. So that was just one thing that we did using Teams, as well as the beers on a Friday afternoon, which I'm sure many organizations have done as well. So staying in the new normal, this represents some feelings that people were saying when they are they feeling connected to the company. And it's that employee engagement piece that I mentioned at the beginning of the session here, about do people have, are they feeling better or worse or staying at home, and engagement with their manager and colleagues. Some things that I just want to call out here is that meetings, the people feel like that one got 20% worse, 40% the same, 49% the same, and 31% got better. And when I was reviewing this slide in the last few days, I actually think that because that stat alone was very insightful to me, when the survey was done in May and early June, it was kind of in the middle of the working from home and this pandemic of everybody in lockdown. And actually I think meetings, and I'd be interesting to know actually if you wouldn't mind adding some comments into the chat about how you're feeling about meetings now. One of the things that I have found, and many other organizations that we work with have found, is that there's now more meetings in the diary than ever. So I'd be interested to know, and just if you mention it in the chat, whether you agree with that comment or not, because I was surprised to see that only 49% felt it stayed the same. I think it was actually be different now, and potentially getting worse. But yeah, interested to know your thoughts about that. So this is again just looking at some productivity, and again feeling very relevant to what we're looking at here today. Do people feel, did our 1,000 people that we surveyed feel they got better or worse or stayed the same? So stress levels have got better from being at home, despite being in a pandemic. People feel like they've also got more free time. I mean, for me, that's an absolute teller of it. People feel that we've got more free time. Probably less commuting time, maybe more time with the family is classed as free time, but also maybe it's the being able to get out of an evening and not having to commute and go out and share time with other people as well, as and when we were allowed to. So I found that really interesting, that the more free time has gone up. So again, this was looking at the new normal. So the next normal is the future. So the next normal is some of the things that I think are highlighted here. It's taking, for me, and what the next normal is, it's taking that good and the bad from the new normal. So the new normal being the fact that was, everything was pushed upon us here in terms of lockdown. And the next normal is the opportunity to look into the future of the workplace and how we might change our work habits. And the next normal is about, let's not go back to the old normal where everybody's in the office 5 days a week, and that trust is now there and it's given to everybody. What can we learn from the new normal that was forced upon us to take forward into the next? And we've got control over this next normal. And I think that's the really fundamental part of looking into the future, is that business owners and employees have control over what that next normal can look like. And for us, we found that 55% of responders didn't want to go back to their normal working setup before the pandemic. So the 55% of people are looking to what that future may look like. And I would love to see maybe a follow-up survey in a few months with these people to understand, have they changed. So we might be releasing another survey later in the future. If you'd like to know more about this future, just go to this survey, go to our website here and have a look at and download the survey report. So now that I've kind of set the scene a little bit as to who we are as Silicon Reef, but also setting the scene around what we've learned over this last kind of 6-month period around the new normal and the future normal, but also how have the Microsoft tools played a part of that for us at Silicon Reef, but also for some of our clients. And as I said, this is not going to get technical at all. I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of what we've learned and then do a little bit of a deep dive perhaps into some of the tools and give you some hints and tips at the end about how you might change your working habits utilizing the tools. But I will just introduce you to the Microsoft ecosystem. So this wheel on the right, it's actually quite old now. It's probably about 3 years old, but it was a good graphic for me to be able to pull out to say, these are the apps available. And there are some missing and some that have changed name, but the point of showing you this wheel is it's just to show you there's lots of applications in the ecosystem. Some of them that you may know, some of them that you may not know, some of them that are becoming legacy, like Skype for Business. You'll see on the right hand side there, that's actually being replaced by Teams next year. So Skype will be no more and Teams is taking over. So the ecosystem is really large and it's actually quite a complex ecosystem. But the great thing about the Microsoft ecosystem, that all of these apps complement each other. And what they've done with Microsoft Teams is they're bringing everybody and all of these applications potentially from the ecosystem into a central place, and that is Microsoft Teams. And I'll talk about that one next. But for me, the ecosystem provides higher levels of productivity, connectivity through things like chat and meetings and doing calls like we're doing today, live events and things like that as well to engage your employees. But also flexibility, because actually, what you can do in one application, you can do in another application as well, and actually you can do them on multiple devices. So I just wanted to show you the wider ecosystem. And one thing I've called out in the first bullet point is to hear that obviously people on the call today, you may not necessarily have access to all of these applications. It's very much dependent on your license with Microsoft, but the tools I'm going to show you today, in particular Teams, Planner, and ToDo, they're available to everybody who has what's called a Microsoft Business Premium or business license. And the My Analytics is more of an enterprise level. So this is if you have an F1 or E1 license or E3 license. I can share a link to a website where you're able to find more if you want to know more about My Analytics, but just to caveat that some of the things that I will talk about today are dependent on your license to the Microsoft ecosystem. So I'll jump into Microsoft Teams, and this is the application that I added probably in about, because everybody's, I'm sure, heard of Microsoft Teams now. In the last 6 months, it's been on TV adverts most evenings and most daytime now. But actually, what you may not know is it's actually been around for 3 years, and we within Silicon Reef adopted it when it first came out. Actually, we were using Slack, as some of you may be using today, previously, but once Teams came along as the alternative, we jumped on board and haven't looked back. So I just wanted to show you that left-hand side graph, and I'll just zoom in onto that graph a second, because I find it really interesting that what happened here is the number of daily, so this is daily active users from March to April, it jumps 31 million people in that monthly period. 31 million people using Teams it's a huge surge in adoption and communication, and it shows you the transformation that people have gone through here. And in Silicon Reef, how we've adopted it, to give you an idea, is that we run our weekly meetings, our weekly all-company meetings using Teams. We now use it for daily stand-ups as well, and we also use it for managing our projects and all of our collaborating on files. It's all done within Microsoft Teams, and you can see by these numbers here that if I just scroll across to the right slightly, is that 93 of the Fortune 100 companies are using Microsoft Teams, with 650 organizations that have over 10,000 users in size. And Microsoft have made it available in multiple languages as well. So it's a worldwide tool. And yeah, it's the one that I'm sure you've all heard of. And it's the one that I think is going to be the biggest differentiator in how we work going forwards in the Microsoft world in the next future and the next ways of working as well, the next normal. So if I just jump straight into giving you some tips around how we've actually been more productive. When we started to use Teams, one of the things that we found was that we absolutely got overload. So many teams created, so many channels created. And one of the things that I found most frustrating was trying to keep up with what's going on. And again, interested to hear your thoughts in the chat, whether that's something you've experienced if you're using Teams. Feature that I use a lot is, across all of the projects that we run, I'm involved in maybe a handful of them. So actually bringing those channels that I am involved in to the top of my Teams left-hand side navigation bar is the ultimate productivity tip for me. It's keeping myself focused on those conversations, those channels, the content, and putting it up into the top left corner of Teams, so I don't have to keep scrolling down the left-hand side. Another one that's really interesting is on the right-hand side. You've got the search bar, and again, it's probably an underutilized feature. People don't really know or use the search bar very often, but all of those / options there are shortcut keys to be able to jump in. So you're seeing there, as you can jump into there, type /, set your status, instantly go to chat. So without having to go to the chat icon, you can actually initiate a chat from the search bar. But also, it's just finding those files. Lots of people say to me, "Oh, I can't remember where I put this." Well, the search is there to help you, but not many people use it, and they think it's a really underutilized tool. So for me, 2 elements of being more productive is using the left-hand side to pin items into the top left of your channels, and also using the search capability. Also, you'll notice there's a little funnel icon there just on the screen. That allows you to actually do a filtered search as well, to really find what you're looking at very quickly. So Microsoft Teams, for me, it is where everything's going to be placed in the future, and I'll talk a little bit more about some tips for that in the next 15 minutes. Microsoft Planner. And again, this is something that I find is a very underutilized, or maybe you not know that it exists in your ecosystem, but actually, if Microsoft Teams is the place where work gets done amongst your team as collective teams, then these next 2 items I'm going to talk about in Planner and ToDo are about how you can be more productive as a team, but also as an individual as well. So I'd introduce you to Microsoft Planner. It's one of the tools in the ecosystem that is available for everybody on an enterprise license, but also on a Microsoft business license as well, a business standard license. So these are things around team tasks rather than individuals. It allows you to create like a Kanban style in columns, and I'll just dive into that in a second actually. And then you actually assign tasks, follow up on subtasks within it, track a duration of time as well. You'll receive notifications in your inbox of tasks when they're due. Again, it's a small project management capability. One thing I'll flag that this is not meant to be a replacement for Microsoft Project. So any of you that run bigger projects with multiple dependencies, you can't do dependencies in Planner, but it's a fantastic tool for tracking projects through that are maybe smaller scale. And if you want to try and get away from project planning in Excel, which is again, it's kind of the fallback option, this is definitely something you should be exploring in terms of how you can manage allocation of tasks to individuals. And what I'll just dive into here on the right hand side as well. In this view, and so it's slightly blurry, I believe, but yeah, you can see these columns here are the Kanban layout for tasks within them, and then each of them you can have an overall a bigger task at the top, and then you can have subtasks within it with like your checklists, assign tasks to multiple people, And by setting a deadline day, and you can see there's one there that's got a red item that says it's overdue, it actually allows you to see when things are due. So how many things are in, are things on progress? Are there things overdue or late? How many are completed? If I look at this top section, when you can actually bring this view into Teams as well, so you can review all the tasks, who they're assigned to, what priority has been set, and how many items have actually been completed of the due items as well, and what bucket they're falling into. So Microsoft Planner is a very, very powerful productivity tool. And again, it shows you there it's available on a mobile app across iOS and Android. But ultimately, if it's something that you're looking to run a project or run something internally, and you want to try and get away from using Excel or perhaps an email-driven status updates, Microsoft Planner is absolutely a fantastic tool to achieve that. Some tips of how to get the most out of it. So you'll see the buckets for the work streams. If I just zoom in again on that right-hand side so you can see it clearer. It didn't work, I'll do that again. There we go. So you can see here these sections of buckets. The other thing I didn't call out was labels. So you can actually assign these red and the green and the purple and this blue. They're all labels that you can actually provide subsections and subtasks notes on them as well. Down the left-hand side, one of my tips is to, when you actually use Planner, add your favorite plans where you do your daily work as a favorite, so that it appears in the top section here, because the more teams that you create and the more plans that you're involved in, this list down the left hand side gets longer and longer and longer. If you just want to focus in on specific regulars, make sure you favorite them so they appear at the top. And if I look down the right hand side here, this is again, it's the desktop view of the one that I showed you on the previous slide with the planner on the app. So but you can actually see the status of each task, how many tasks are in each bucket, and the buckets are the columns, remember. How many people are assigned tasks. So again, as a project manager, you might want to look across and who's overloaded or how many people are on track. But also by clicking on the tasks here, you can dive into them a little bit deeper as well. So a tip here is to create the buckets for the streams of activity. Make sure you assign tasks to people so that they can actually receive a notification. They'll also receive an email to say that a task has been assigned to them. And if you add due dates, which I would recommend that every task has due dates assigned to it, then you're able to, again, track people with their notifications and say you've got a task that's upcoming, and it will tell you when it's overdue. There's comments that are available. So if I was to click into a card, I would actually be able to see a list of comments, and I can track updates on them without having to kind of send email round robins of what I'm doing and what's going on. And as I mentioned, use the favorites as well. So that's Microsoft Planner, and this is about me being more productive as a team. Now I'm going to talk about Microsoft ToDo, and this is one of my favorites. I've been using Microsoft ToDo for probably about just over a year now, and this is about personal productivity. So your individual tasks, getting things done. It could be things like personal tasks, like you've got on the screen there, do the grocery shopping or put an order in, contact your teacher, or yoga like they've got there. But actually using these tasks will really help you organize. And I'm a very go digital person. I like everything to be across my multiple devices. Some other people like to write things down in a book and tick them off. Either way, it works great. But for me, I wanted to bring this into the digital world. So I run all my tasks through Microsoft ToDo. And again, similar to Planner, it will send you notifications in your inbox of tasks and when they're to be completed. If I just dive into that right hand side one, so this was actually I'll talk a little bit about this shortly as well, but you'll see this email has actually come from Cortana. And if you're aware, if you're on Windows 10 or if you've got a device that has a Windows application on it, you can actually have Cortana, which is Microsoft's AI bot. She will go through and look through my applications and actually send me notifications to say what's coming up, what do I need to do, and this is actually picking up something to say, I noticed that you sent an email to this person. It sounded like there was a task that you needed to do. Have you completed it? And I was able to say, yep, I completed that task, and it checks it off in my to-do application. So the Microsoft roadmap of AI is going to enhance how you actually receive productivity notifications into your inbox as well. So even if you're not using the tools day in, day out, you'll find that your inbox will start to help you to be more productive. Other things that it does is it does integration with flags. So some of you are used to working in Microsoft Outlook. You use the red flag to say that's a to-do. Well, when you do that, it will automatically send a notification that send that to-do as a flag into the application of Microsoft To Do. So if you were on the go and you wanted to see all of your action items in your email inbox, you can simply just go into To Do and follow that. A little productivity hack, I guess I'll call it, that I do. At the end of every day, I spend about 10 minutes getting my 5 tasks that I'm going to achieve the following day into To Do, so I can actually start using this thing that's on the screen now, is that setting my tasks that I want to try and achieve into priority order and allocating them to my next day's activity, so I can go through and make sure I tick them off. That's, again, it's a personal productivity hack, but one that I find really useful. Tips around using Microsoft To Do, how to be more productive as an individual. Use the plan for the next day's task. So that this is showing you the desktop view here, so you can actually add a task in, add in when it's going to be planned for. And another thing that I think people use a lot of is working in Word or PowerPoint or maybe Excel, and you might use the comments pane and the markup capability. Well, a new feature that is coming, and it's probably going to be coming in the next kind of 2 months into the Microsoft Office suite, is when you actually do like some markup in a Word doc, you are actually able to mention somebody and assign a task. That will go and assign a task into their Microsoft To Do as well. So if they maybe forget that they've been mentioned in a document, they've actually got it visible in the Microsoft To Do as something that's following them around and able to track when they're actually when it needs to be done for. So that's another really great feature that I use a lot, actually, the Microsoft To Do. And one other thing I just wanted to highlight was that Teams, where I said that the next future of where work is going to happen in the next, again, it's in probably the next 6 to 8 weeks, Microsoft are introducing a new application within Teams, which rolls up all of your to-dos and all of your planners, so that's your personal productivity and your team productivity, into the left-hand bar of Teams, and it's going to be a rolled up task view. So it's keeping you in that single place of work within Teams, where you're collaborating with people, you're communicating, you're sharing documents, but actually, if you want to get tasks done, they're also going to be visible in the left-hand side of Teams as well. So that's another good extra feature that's coming, and should also help you with your productivity. So moving on to less productivity, but about the looking after yourself. And I'd like to introduce you to the My Analytics. And when I spoke to Warren and Amy about this previously, this is the one that was perhaps the one that was you'd never heard of it, and it wasn't, maybe people weren't aware of it. It is a relatively new feature in Microsoft, so it's only probably been around about a year. But for me, actually, this is something that's changed how I work quite a lot, but it's also helped me understand when I'm overworking. And the aim of this technology here is it's my personal analytics. It's not visible to anybody else in my company. It's not something that my manager sees. It's not something that anybody else can see. It's helping me understand my way of working using the Microsoft ecosystem tools of Outlook, Teams, and across all my devices as well. So it does look at your working patterns. Some people think it's a bit big brothery, but just to assure you, this is not about sharing the information. It's actually, it's my personal analytics. There is a layer above it called workplace analytics, which some organizations have, which can roll up that data. But normally people will have access to the My Analytics layer. So it's looking after yourself. And about 3 or 4 months ago, I was looking at my Analytics, and I I found myself at not my well-being score was really low. I hadn't had any days where I was actually allowing myself to focus on tasks, but also actually it told me that I was working on weekends. And actually, if I just zoom down to, actually I've started this list but left one first. So introduce a concept of focus time. So focus time is a tip I'll talk about in a minute, but it's where you can actually talk about being in meetings all day long. It's a tool that helps you to stop and block out some time in your diary, and I'll show you how to do that in the next slide. But also, it's are you the well-being element? Are you able to disconnect and recharge? And if I just show you this bottom right corner here, I actually took this screenshot this morning, and for me, this is my personal score for my well-being activity of how I'm performing. And I said at the beginning of this is a journey for me, but for me it was about a tool that helped me have awareness of where I am today. So this shows that my quiet days without significant activity outside my working hours, and you can actually, see there you've got the ability to configure your working hours. If these aren't my working hours, you can actually tailor them to suit you. If you were a part-time worker, or if you work evenings or less than 5 days a week, then you can configure the working hours to suit you. But actually here you can see that I've only really had 2 days, and that was a Sunday and a Saturday, where I wasn't communicating. And if you look up in the top right corner here, it tells you where my disruptions are. So I do have a period of time where I'm running into meetings outside of my 9 to 5. The majority of my disruptions are spent sending emails, and I can imagine that it's me responding to emails on a weekend or of an evening that's contributing to this score, and also taking chats and calls. So actually, if I look in this bottom right corner, my quiet hours work, it looks like you worked during your quiet hours for more than 6.5 hours per week over the last month. So that's a telltale sign that I need to fundamentally change how I work. And I know it myself that things like that need to happen, but having this data available to me to tell me, Alex, you're not getting enough breaks, or in the last 4 weeks I'm working on weekends, it tells me that my balance isn't right. And when I look at my work happy goals, I need to change how I'm doing this. So actually, this is a journey for me, but it's something that I'm able to help me understand how I can improve as an individual. And when we speak to our customers and we make them aware that this feature is available, particularly during lockdown, actually, when people are working longer hours, or they're working over and into weekends, perhaps, to try and stay in contact with their team or with their peers, having this to track how you're doing as self-productivity insights was really useful. So it breaks it down into focus, well-being, network, and collaboration. And what I'll just do next is I'll show you one of the things that I would like you to take away today. If you have this available, and again, this is only available for people who have an E3 license, but you can go and purchase this as an E3 license for specific people in your organization. But what this is showing you is it's actually helping you book some time in your diary. And when I think back to the study the data that we received about the meeting outputs from people, and about how people are happy at the moment, but then I'm going to read your comments in a minute. But I heard that everybody was talking about Zoom fatigue and meeting fatigue and video fatigue. Well, actually, what this allows you to do is it allows you to diarize up to 2 hours a day, and that's doing it there automatically for focus time. And if you look at the ultimate productivity hack, it's blocking out your diary so that people can't put meetings into it. And this will do it automatically. It's not something you have to go and plan yourself. You can set this to automatically go and block out that time to 2 hours a day, up to 2 hours a day. It will automatically look ahead up to 2 weeks in the future and go and block out that time. As you can actually remind it to book it yourself, but actually this will automatically go and do it. So you're actually getting some time back to actually get stuff done. Because one of the biggest things I found is that meetings just rule at the moment, and productivity is probably forcing me to go into those evenings and weekends because I'm not getting the time to do it. So one thing I would really suggest, if you have the ability to do this, is to either do it manually, but also focus time is something available using My Analytics. So with about 10 minutes to go, I'll just skip on to some takeaways for today that I'd like you to go away with. Some hints and tips on how we think you can work happy. 5 productivity tips that I've covered today. So Teams is using the pin channels and utilize the search feature to find your latest content. Teams is where you are working and where I'm working, and if it's not today, it's probably where you will be working in the future. If you're still using Skype, you've got a year left to move away over to Teams. Planner, the team working place for scheduling tasks, possibly a replacement for you for using Excel for project plans, but also helping understand and give people accountability of assigning tasks to individuals and tracking them through to delivery. ToDo, the tip is to take 10 minutes at the end of every day to plan your next day's activities. That doesn't have to be in the application ToDo. It could just be with pen and paper, but it is a bit of a productivity hack I really enjoy, and it's made a difference to how I work. But having it on the app and being able to track that is really useful for me. The My Analytics element of focus time, I'd really suggest that you just kind of, if you don't have My Analytics, at least go and book some focus time in your diary. I've heard people call it dentist. They go into the dentist time, and people block that out themselves, which I found quite funny when I've talked to people about this in the past. But that can be, that could be your productivity time. Equally, it could be your space to go and get some time out, go for a walk, do some yoga, do some meditation, whatever it is that's your thing. It could be your focus time for whatever gets you back into the flow of concentrating. Or if you have been working the longer hours and need that time back, it's your time back as well. So use that effectively. Teams, I didn't go too much into Teams. I kind of assume that everybody knows what it is, but using the tabs and the applications to stay in the flow of work, and that's the tabs on the applications that could be bringing in Word documents, bringing in Planner into your Teams, so into your actual projects that you're running, and on the tab on the top to track things through. And one of the other big things that just an extra bonus tip that we did internally within Silicon Reef was, again, it's back on the meetings again, but it's reducing the defaults. So when you're using Outlook, and if you're using Outlook, the default settings are to have 30 and 60-minute meetings. But I'm just going to zoom into this section in the bottom right corner here. If you go into your Outlook and you go into File, and then I think it's File and Options, and then into Calendar, it brings you to this screen here. And if you look at this screen here, you can change the default duration of meetings. So end anything that's less than an hour by 5 minutes, or anything that's 1 hour or longer by 15 minutes. So you're bringing down that default time from 30 down to 25. And for me, that's quite a saving grace, because it means that I've got time to go and get a drink in between my back-to-back calls that I might be having. But we encouraged everybody in Silicon Reef to start doing this for any meetings that they're sending to clients as well. And actually, I think one of the statistics is that the most effective meetings happen in 25 minutes. So, which is why I will draw this to a close. And yeah, we're now about 40 minutes into the presentation. So thank you very much for listening. And I hope that there are some tools in there that you're able to take away and help you be more productive and ultimately work happy. If you do have any questions, I'd happily hear them now, but here's my email address if you wanted to follow up.
Brilliant, Alex. Really enjoyed that. Thank you for that. I think that whole, principle and core kind of concept that you've got within Silicon Reef of work happy was something that really resonated with me. And I think, in this day and age where I think we are all talking about working from home more, and we're all introducing new policies around more flexible working, be that hours, be that time working from home or in the office. And that concept of actually taking that to the stage of work from anywhere is the next way of thinking about it. And possibly, when I was listening to it, the way we should be thinking about it, whereas perhaps we're all thinking about it's home or office, but that concept of work from anywhere was great. And in terms of the hints and tips, there was loads in there, but I do like those 2 principles of focus time. Something I do try and get in my diary, but I do it for a week or two and then get into bad habits again.
Exactly.
But that shortening of meetings, to give that time.
Yeah.
Particularly, I suppose we'll go and have a look at the chat in a minute, but the frequency of meetings, if they are increasing, particularly if they're over Zoom, that 5-10 minutes to go and get some fresh air, get a coffee and a drink. So there's some really good tips in there as well, Alex. So we have got some questions. So do you mind if I pose those to you, Alex?
Yeah, go for it. Absolutely.
So we've got in here, what top tips can you share with a newbie? This is from Marie, to get started on Microsoft Teams. Marie's downloaded it already, but probably in those early days.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think people aren't necessarily aware of is in Microsoft Teams, there is actually a fantastic self-learning tool. I'm just actually bringing up my Teams now so I can remember where it is in the background. But there's actually Microsoft tools themselves that they generally have the help facility, but actually this one in Teams is in the bottom left corner of Teams, and it's just like a question mark with a circle that brings you up the help. And there are kind of the keyboard shortcuts is another kind of good productivity hack, but there's also, if you go and actually look at that bottom left corner for help and then click on training, it takes you off to some really good video materials and some resources about how you get up and running. I mean, there's a quick start guide, there's set up and customize, introduction to teams and channels. They're all generally under 3-minute videos of how you can get up and running. So yeah, use that bottom left corner help, watch the videos. They're really short, really good. And if you need any extra tips, I can help. Perfect.
Thank you, Alex. Question from Mark. If you wish to maximize productivity and team working via Teams, Planner and ToDo, how do you minimize the tendency to revert to the old style of Outlook and endless threads? That's the question, isn't it?
It's a tough one. And I've worked in organizations that have taken a 3-year journey to do this. It's not an overnight thing. It's a transition. It's all about adoption and change management, which is a fundamental part of how people work. But back to the first point, it's more like an awareness thing as well of what the possible is. So getting the training right, getting people aware of where those help things are to get them up and running. And I think the productivity tips, again, it's understanding how people work. And like I said, some people just prefer pen and paper. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're collaborating with teams of people across the world, potentially, this is where these tools really come into their own. And things like Planner, getting tasks done and tracking them and getting people out of using Excel, which was just a funny thing to ever even think about using for running projects, but people do it. So yeah, using these tools and transitioning and showing the benefits of the tools, okay, say is the biggest challenge, and that just takes time. But it's small wins along the way. Start with a pilot group, show the benefits, shout about it. Adoption and change management flow, I guess, is the way I would go about that.
This is an interesting one, isn't it? Because that what you've just said applies to any new software adoption, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Being within your own business, and you adopt a new piece of software because you think it's going to be great, it's going to be efficient, it's going to save all the time, and then that implementation and actually making the change happen and the adoption happen that always presents the challenge.
Yeah, and it's often the one that's overlooked. The change in management and adoption is often the last thing that people think about, but really important.
Brilliant, thank you. Is there a functionality of Teams to use it to run team building sessions, workshop sessions? What are the upsides and downsides? Can you do breakout rooms like Zoom?
Good question. So the benefit of using things that are in the cloud, obviously, is that Microsoft push out updates all the time. So Zoom, you can do breakout rooms. Breakout rooms are coming to Teams in the next quarter. They are starting with Microsoft Education, because obviously that's pretty big for a focus at the moment. And yeah, you will be able to do Microsoft Teams breakout rooms as a feature in the next quarter. And things like running events, you can also run live events using Teams as well. It's similar to Zoom, but yeah, absolutely. We ran our first quarter. We usually meet up as Silicon Reef on a quarterly basis, face to face. We ran our first ever quarterly meeting using Teams. Actually, it was really successful. Really successful. Yeah, we did fun things like Through the Keyhole and some other fun games as well. And we had a section where everybody had to do fancy dress and yeah, just fun things like that to get people engaged. But you can definitely do, deliver webinars, live events, live training, and same with Zoom, you can record them all as well.
Yeah, if you remember to hit record.
If you remember to hit record.
And just a quick question for me then, because a lot of people are, we're doing this over Zoom. What do you think the benefits of using Microsoft products, obviously as a Microsoft reseller and partner, that would be your preference over something like Zoom?
It's horses for courses, Warren. They're all very similar. It depends on your ecosystem. I mean, at Silicon Reef, we would run events using Zoom as well.
Okay.
But it depends on the audience. It tends to be if we're doing something with multiple businesses and running our clients, and all of our clients are on the Microsoft world. But if we're doing a webinar like this, we'd probably use Zoom rather than using Teams, just because it's more flexible and it's set up of features as well today.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Just to answer, there's a few chats around. Sarah says she's finding Zoom meetings exhausting because they are just one after another after another. Miranda is saying stayed the same for the most part on the meetings front, only increased in some extra coffee chat meetings to keep in touch with colleagues.
Yeah.
So yeah, good. Well, that's the end of the, I believe, of the Q&As and the chat questions, Alex. It's been great to have you on this webinar for you to show the insights that you have and the knowledge that you have. So really, thank you, Alex. We're getting some great feedback as well as people kind of log off, but that's great to see, and thank you for your time, Alex. From the Evolve team, I suppose what's been left for me to say is, look, you know, get involved, you know, become a supporter, go to evolvemembers.com, become a supporter, click that button, you'll get to hear about all of the webinars, events, you'll get the weekly newsletter with the insights, content, and special offers as we release new offerings. And talking about new offerings, we are going to launch a co-working space, flexible working and office space, in our fantastic old school building in Ashley Cross in Poole. So if you haven't heard of that yet and it is of interest to you, then please do reach out to me or to Amy at Evolve, and we'd love to give you some details. So Alex's fantastic webinar ends Series 1 of the Evolve webinars. Series 2 starts again after a small break for the summer on the 17th of September, where we've got Louis Barnett, who's got a great entrepreneurial journey and story to tell, also a story of overcoming adversity. And we're going to do a Q&A entrepreneur session with him. So details are on the evolvemembers.com website, so go register. It'll be great to see you there. So without any further ado, thank you once again, Alex, and thank you for everybody for attending. Thank you for your time. I know time is really important at the moment to everybody. We really appreciate the support you've given to Evolve as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Warren. Thanks, everybody. Bye.